Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to read from A Course in Miracles, complete and annotated edition, Chapter 8, The Undivided Will, Section 6, Using the Body solely for communication, on to little number 9. So we're doing the second part. Yesterday I did part 1. This channel is devoted to extending love to the whole kingdom, and that would include our furry, feathered and scaled animal friends who are part of the sonship. So previously we've been talking about, in the early part of the chapter, by the way, it's on page 314 in the purple book. So previously we've been talking about how we use the body, or how the Holy Spirit uses the body, and how the ego uses the body. And they use it for quite different purposes. And it basically sort of says that when the Holy Spirit uses the body, it is beautiful, holy and helpful. And when the ego uses the body, it's ugly, savage and harmful. One uses the body for union. The Holy Spirit uses the body to commune, uses it for communication and union of the sonship, union with you and your brother, and there Jesus, Holy Spirit, God can join in that union. And the other uses it to separate, to attack. It's also stated that attack is always physical, because it's about the body, the belief that the body can attack to get you something you want. Anyway, so we'll go on to number 9, which is about halfway down page 314. To use the body unnaturally is to lose sight of the Holy Spirit's purpose, and thus to confuse the goal of his curriculum. So the Holy Spirit's curriculum is unification, love, gentleness, and when we use our body unnaturally, that purpose is confused and we lose sight of it, and it becomes something that the ego uses unnaturally for attack and getting. And in a previous YouTube I did, he states that what the ego gives us in our conscious mind is the goal of physical pleasure, money, fame and power. And underneath that is this attack. But generally speaking, we're not conscious of the attack. And this is seen really easily in animal agriculture and food and cooking and culinary pleasure, where we take what we see is this beautiful, delicious physical pleasure of eating what we call food, and yet before that thing that was on your plate got there, it was a living, breathing Son of God, a sentient Christ that was enslaved, tortured and murdered for that purpose. And Jesus does say to look on the face of Christ, and that is the way through to this union. And he mentions in the Manual for Teachers those who have seen the face of Christ, would you look longingly back on a slaughterhouse? And He's referring to all the unnatural things the body does in the world, including slaughterhouses. So I'll go on. There is nothing so frustrating to a pupil as to place him in a curriculum which he cannot learn. His sense of inadequacy suffers, and he must become depressed. Being faced with an impossible learning situation, regardless of why it is impossible, is the most depressing thing in the world. In fact, it is ultimately why the world is depressing. So why is the world depressing? Why do we find ourselves depressed? Because we're using, obviously, the body unnaturally, and we're using it to get things that aren't eternal, that we can't actually hold. We can extend love as much as we wish, but when we're trying to get something that we believe is separate from us via attack, anyone who has ever sort of tried to get anything from the world, which is basically everybody, can attest to this. They'll say, "Oh, you get it," and then it goes, and then you get a relationship, and then they annoy you, or they leave you, or you get something, you eat a meal, and then 5 minutes and a couple of hours later you're still hungry, and there's this sort of doing housework, and it needs to get done again, and the grass is always growing, and the lawn needs to be mowed again, and sort of like looking into the world, trying to get something from the world is depressing. That's, I guess, why people end up as nihilists, because they do see what the Course is saying without having read the Course, but they don't know there's something else. They just sort of fall into this belief that the world is meaningless, and that's it. It's just a sort of meaninglessness, that there's all there is just passing chaos. So I think I've gone there once or twice myself. Okay, I'll keep going. The Holy Spirit's curriculum is never depressing, being a curriculum in joy. Whenever the reaction to learning is depression, it is only because the goal of the curriculum has been lost sight of. In the world, not even the body is perceived as whole. Its purpose is seen as fragmented into many functions which bear little or no relationship to each other, so that it appears to be ruled by chaos. Guided by the ego, it is. So that sort of just relates back to what I said. We need to use the body to get dressed, then we go and use the body to go to work, and there's all these separate things happening, and we're trying to manage time, and someone's needs over here are demanded, and at the same time my needs are different, and so there's all those constant fragmentation. Guided by the Holy Spirit, it is not. It becomes only a means by which part of the mind which you have separated from your spirit can reach beyond its distortions and return to spirit. So Holy Spirit gives us a unified purpose to return to the Spirit, and He gives us a curriculum that uses the body, uses the illusion to dream ourselves out of the illusion, and we don't need to deny the body, it's just repurposed, and it's about to talk about that. So I'll just read back over that again to go into the next sentence. It becomes only a means by which part of the mind which you have separated from your spirit can reach beyond its distortions and return to the spirit. The ego's temple thus becomes the temple of the Holy Spirit. So the ego's temple, the body, thus becomes the temple of the Holy Spirit. So the body does become sort of like a temple where devotion to please Him, capital H, replaces devotion to the ego. In this sense, the body does become a temple to God because His voice abides in it directly. In this sense, the body does become a temple to God because His voice abides in it by directing the use to which you put it. So, we're being invited to not deny the body, but to give the body to become a temple for God, which within His voice abides and directs the way that we use the body. Healing is a result of using the body solely for communication. Now, I want to go back to the earlier section that talks about exactly what communication is, because I think it's a really beautiful way of putting it. So he says, the Holy Spirit interprets the body only as a means of communication, being the communication link between God and His separated sons. He interprets everything you have in the light of what He is. The ego separates through the body. The Holy Spirit reaches through it to others. And it also says, here you are, in the service, if you use the body for this communication, and only for this, you cannot use it for attack. And he does say attack is always physical. In the service of uniting, it becomes a beautiful lesson in communion, which has value until communion is. Communication ends separation. Now, it does mention somewhere about how when we join together in communion, which is like a form of union, He also joins us in that union. So we see in relation to veganism and animals, we love animals, and all veganism, people don't like that word, but all it is a word that says, I am not having a special relationship and separating the human kingdom from the animal kingdom. I see animals' needs as the same as humans, that they are the sons of God and they are there to commune with me in love. And so therefore I don't enslave, torture or eat them or take their bodily products for my own use, whether it's for wearing or drinking or making cheese or eating. We just see them as the golden rule, do unto others as you would have do unto them, unto you. And we don't attack them, of course. And it's pretty impossible to use an animal, to have an animal as the purpose of getting something without attacking them, because getting is attacking. And so, yeah, to look at it is a great way of seeing the classroom, because if you actually look at a documentary on animal use, like something like Earthlings or Dominion, where they show you the standardized practice of farming and slaughterhouse, it's much clearer as to the ego undisguised and using this sort of getting and attacking of bodies with sort of no compensation of any kind of love at all. It's not really even a mixed bag. It's all farmers, some farmers love their animals. Not love in the true sense, but they can be at times caring of their animals' well-being, but in the end they are considered a product, and in the end they do send them all off to the slaughterhouse for their finances. But before we sort of think how terrible farmers are, we have to look at the fact that the only reason why they're doing that is consumer demand. So it does lie on the mind that craves the meat, which is the ego that wants to attack. And as we question the world, we start to see the insanity of it. That what seems normal, we suddenly realize is very strange and horrible. And so there's this mind that craves something foul like murder and calls it delicious and puts a dead body inside a body. Which is a very strange thing to do, really. And we do that and we call it normal and delicious and lovely. And then we point our fingers at the bad men in the mean farms that didn't kill their animals ethically, or the slaughterhouse workers that were cruel, like they should have been lovely to the animals. And it's like, well, just think about that and how insane that statement is. And just know that your body was being directed by the Holy Spirit to pay a hitman. And so we need to stop. We need to think about it a lot until we see directly that we are attacking. This is an attack, and then we can hand our bodies over to the Holy Spirit. And maybe we have handed our bodies over to the Holy Spirit in all these other realms, but we must go shopping with the Holy Spirit and get the Holy Spirit to spend the money at the supermarket and not the ego, because otherwise we are just we're just sort of causing, within the world where our temple is neutral, the body is neutral, yet the ego uses it to do its blood rights. So it's big. It's a full-on kind of thing. But the spirit will just as soon as the Holy Spirit's given the body, the cravings drop away, because it's filled with this joyful purpose that he mentions before, a curriculum in joy. And if you read the Manual for Teachers, it says joy is the direct fruit of gentleness, and gentleness is strength and harmlessness. And so gentleness doesn't harm, and it leads to joy. And so this handing over is the gentleness coming in and the joy, handing over the body. Healing is the result of using the body solely for communication. Since this is natural, it heals by making whole, which is also natural. So making whole is unification, is oneness, is seeing the separate suns as the one in the one love. And that is natural. All mind is whole, and the belief that part of it is physical or not mind is a fragmented or sick interpretation. So if you think your body's just doing this thing because that's the world and that your mind's healed, and yet you see a separate body doing separated things, that's fragmented or a sick interpretation, and that it is whole. When the body is given to the Holy Spirit, it does what the Holy Spirit does. It follows the Holy Spirit's mind system. So of course you won't see the body going and attacking under the Holy Spirit. It is not fragmented. I'll read that again. All mind is whole, and the belief that part of it is physical or not mind. So the belief that the physical body is not under the mind, that it has a will of its own, is a fragmented or sick interpretation. Mind cannot be made physical, but it can be made manifest through the physical if it uses the body to go beyond itself. So I think there's another way of looking at it. They say the body is in the mind, not the mind is in the body. So the body's in the mind, and it can be made manifest. So the mind cannot be physical, but it can be made manifest. So the mind can be made manifest, and it can be made manifest as love and communion, or it can be made manifest as attack and getting. And it's made manifest through the physical, so it's expressed in the symbol of the body if it uses the body to go beyond itself. If it uses, well, it sounds like it's pretty impossible not to. By reaching out, the mind extends itself. If it does not stop at the body, it does not stop at the body, for if it does, it is blocked in its purpose. So the mind extends itself, and we talk about extending love, not getting and attacking. It does not stop at the body, for if it does, it's blocked in its purpose. So if it just sees its brother animals as a body to be eaten and not as the Son of God, and doesn't see the Christ, it's blocked in its purpose. It just sees a body to get something. A mind which has been blocked has allowed itself to be vulnerable to attack because it has turned against itself. So a blocked mind is a mind that stops at the body, and it has allowed itself to be vulnerable to attack because it's turned against itself. So it's been used wrongly by the wrong mind, and that makes it vulnerable to attack because it's in this new thought system around slavery. It's enslaved to the ego. It acts out slavery. It acts out torture and murder, and it seems to do it to another body, but it's the mind that craves this physical pleasure, and it's just this whole horrible prison. The removal of the blocks, like the prison bars, then is the only way to guarantee help and healing. So we said union is helpful, is beautiful, and holy. And here he's mentioning helpful and healing. Help and healing are normal expressions of a mind which is working through the body but not in it. So I'll keep going because I think it will explain more. The removal of the blocks then is the only way to guarantee help and healing. Help and healing are the normal expressions of the mind which is working through the body but not in it. If the mind believes the body is the goal, it will distort its perception of the body, and by blocking its own extension beyond it, it will induce illness by fostering separation. So, the Holy Spirit wants to use the body for help and healing, and that's normal. It works through the body, it reaches through the body, but it knows that it's not the body. If the mind believes the body is the goal, so the mind goes and gets a bag of meat at the supermarket and goes, this dead body here is something. This is my goal, to get to the supermarket and buy a body. It will distort its perception of the body, its own body, I guess, and others' bodies by blocking its own extension beyond it. By not being able to extend and see the Christ and not just the body. And this will induce illness by fostering separation. It's you, and you're separate from me, and whatever I do to you is meaningless to me because you're just a body, you're just there for my pleasure. And this fosters illness. And that's not you, that's the ego that is being handed the body to use as its temple. Perceiving the body as a separate entity cannot but foster illness because it is not true. So we're not separate. What you do to others, you do to yourself. A medium of communication will lose its usefulness if it is used for anything else. So if you're not communing God's love, then you are useless, basically. To use a medium of communication as a medium of attack is an obvious confusion in purpose. So a medium is the body. If it's not used for communication and it's used for attack instead, it's a confusion in purpose. To communicate is to join, and to attack is to separate. Now, this is where people think that they're not attacking. Like, there's this because things seem to be done by other bodies in another suburb, and you just seem to be having the pleasure part, which is the food. The ego can quickly say, well, you've had no experience of attack, so therefore that's imaginary. Like, the whole attack is so hidden from you. And when people say, when you point that out, people will actually say, oh, you're attacking me by thinking I'm attacking. And some of the people I've said to them, if what you're doing is really joyful, you should be able to go to a slaughterhouse or watch slaughterhouse footage and feel 100% communion and joy and love. You wouldn't be afraid to look at it. You would love to look at it. Just as if we experience love, we would love to see where that was, to unify with God. We wanted to unify from its source. I love you, another person, and then I go, that joins in with this union of source, which is God, which is the love that I extend through my communication device. But if you want to communicate pleasure through eating a body, why not look where the source is and see if you feel joy? But this is not something that people want to look at, because there is attack involved and guilt. And I guess if I could say anything to you now, I would say to you, anyone who's listening to this who is feeling attacked by what I'm saying, doesn't want to look at their attack, feels guilty, or maybe their mind's a little bit open and sort of aware, is to say, look, we've all been there, we've all seen that we are killers and attackers, all the vegan people, and we've it's a hard thing, it's a difficult thing to look at, but once we lay down and surrender to the Holy Spirit, the attack goes away in this area, and there's no need to feel guilty, because what has happened is we've just simply believed our ego thoughts that have told us something, and we can let them go. We can let them go and have them replaced by this love and this joy. I'll go on. How can you do both simultaneously, so attack and join, with the same thing and not suffer? The same thing like the body, using the body to simultaneously join an attack. And not suffer. Perception of the body can be unified only by one purpose. This releases the mind from temptation to see it in many lights. So perception of the body can be unified only by one purpose. He's repeating himself again and again, and this releases the mind from temptation to see it in many lights, and gives it over entirely to the one light in which it can be really understood at all. To confuse a learning device with a curriculum goal is a fundamental confusion. Learning can hardly be meaningfully arrested at its own aids and hope to understand them or its real purpose. So a learning aid is you could maybe sort of see this body as a device or a learning device. And we don't hand ourselves over to the body, we hand ourselves over to the mind, because there could be fear if we think we're just a body, separate and vulnerable, and to know that through this, the miracles of following love, we can beautifully achieve this unified goal. Learning must lead beyond the body to the re-establishment of the power of the mind in it. This can be accomplished only if the mind extends to other minds and does not arrest itself in its extension. The arrest of the mind's extension is the cause of all illnesses because only extension is the mind's function. Block this and you have blocked health because you have blocked the mind's joy. The opposite of joy is depression. When your learning promotes depression instead of joy, you cannot be listening to God's joyous teacher, the Holy Spirit, and you must be learning amiss. To see a body as anything except a means of pure extension is to limit your mind and hurt yourself. Health is therefore nothing more than united purpose. If the body is brought under the purpose of the mind, it becomes whole because the mind's purpose is one. So here we are, we're saying now, when we give our body to extend love and become whole and extend beyond looking at other bodies as bodies, we become well. We become joyful and we can't be ill. Attack can only be an assumed goal of the body, but the body apart from the mind has no purpose at all. You are not limited by the body, and thought cannot be made flesh, but mind can be manifested by the body if it goes beyond it and doesn't not interpret it as a limitation. So the unification of the mind, he's just saying the same thing over and over. Your mind sees the Christ love if it's given to the Holy Spirit for correction. And it won't see bodies to get something. It'll go beyond them and join. And it won't, this is where I think people get confused because they think it's just loving your other human beings and that animals are sort of like inanimate objects or just some part of the dream in the background because people aren't around the animals, aren't around the farm animals, generally speaking. Or they're in specialness, if they're just in this special relationship where we attack and kill and maim because of the special hate. I don't know exactly, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know exactly what's running the show on all of this because when you go into the mind of love, it just seems absolutely bizarre. But I can just trust that what he's saying is true. I've never, even as a child, I wasn't someone who enjoyed hurting animals. I felt sad for them. I remember stopping a boy at school from pulling the wings off flies, and I just thought it was the most bizarre thing to do. I do know the fear, like mostly I wasn't afraid of animals, but occasionally I'd experience fear of spiders or an angry dog or things like that. But all the birds, I used to always pat birds. I've been bitten by birds a bazillion times because I just loved them and I wanted to touch them, and I didn't ever hold against them that biting. So yeah, but I was a meat eater. I didn't make the connection because it's in my unconscious mind, this thing, and we seem to be brought up with it. but without being a victim, there is this choice on some level with the family of origin that we came into, and this whole ego program. But yeah, there's probably ego uses many different ways to get its job done. It could be one thing or another, but in the end, it is an attack of a body. Whenever you see another as limited to or by the body, you are imposing this limit on yourself. Are you willing to accept this when your whole purpose of learning should be to escape from limitations? To conceive of a body as a means of attack of any kind is to entertain even the possibility that joy could possibly result, is a clear-cut indication of a poor learner. So now he's calling us a poor learner if we use the body as a means of attack of any kind. That's a very nice way, a gentle way of saying it. If you're using a body as attack and not for joy, it's the clearest indication, a very clear-cut indication you are a poor learner. You haven't listened to him. He has accepted a learning goal in obvious contradiction to the unified purpose of the curriculum and is interfering with his ability to accept it as his own. Joy is unified purpose, and unified purpose is only God's. When yours is unified, it is his. Interfere with his purpose and you need salvation. You have condemned yourself, but condemnation is not of God. Therefore, it is not true, no more than are any of the results of your condemnation. When you see your brother as a body, you are condemning him. When you see your animal brother as a body, you're condemning him because you have condemned yourself. But if all condemnation is real, and it must be unreal, because it is a form of attack, then it can have no results. So he's saying, don't worry, there's no results on the spirit of your spirit or the animal, but you are a poor learner. Do not allow yourself to suffer from the results of what is not true. So if you're doing something unreal like attacking, you'll see the results. And that's not, that's not what we want. We're wasting time, more or less. Free your mind from the belief that this is possible. It is a complete impossibility, and your full awareness of its complete impossibility lies your only hope for release. So when you realize it's impossible to get something from another body, that you think you can get something from your brother's body, when you realize that, finally, that there's nothing to get, and the only thing we can do in this world is to love, if this is your only hope of release, but what other hope would you want? Freedom from illusion lies only in not believing them. You've got to stop believing in that a dead body is delicious. You've got to stop believing of many other things, but this is what this channel's devoted to. You've got to stop believing that there's protein or something your body needs to eat a body to stay alive because of something in the body and get pleasure. and your body gets some sort of power from big muscles or pleasure or all these things that we do to another body. Where are they without your belief? And I'd say, if you say to me you don't believe, well then what are you doing it for? What are you eating? The Son of God, why is your mind craving to see the Son of God as a body and eat it? If you think you're not doing that, look at what your body's doing. What is it expressing? Which mind is it expressing when it goes to the supermarket? There is no attack, but there is no attack, but there is unlimited communication and therefore unlimited power and wholeness. The power of wholeness is extension. So we are one, and we are one with God. And that power is extension, extending love. Do not arrest your thought in this world. Do not stop the extension. Call it to a rest, and you will open your mind to creation in God. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a beautiful day. Part 1 is up already, and this is part 2. Enjoy. Okay. Bye.